Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, the only person on the show with no nickname. And joining me, I have the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest. It's Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
I am really excellent, Tim. It seemed like you were a little upset that you don't have a nickname. Is that true?
Not really. I just never really thought of one because the nickname thing kind of started with Kim the Geek. I guess she had worked in radio before and had previous bad experiences, so wanted to go buy a nickname, and just nicknames just kind of stuck for everybody but me. I don't know what the hell you'd call me anyway.
Tim the Dutchman.
No.
Tim the Merry Dutchman.
No.
Your last name is very unique. I think that you could capitalize on it in a nickname.
How? You've been Jousma.
Exactly. Or I'm Jousmatic.
What would be the symptoms of Jousma?
I'm feeling Jousmatic. Yeah. You're just kind of cantankerous.
That never happens.
Never.
But we are here today to kind of dive into some more horror movies here. But this time we're picking an interesting choice. The one we are going to watch right now is the movie Psycho. However, it is the Gus Van Sant version of Psycho that was released, I believe, in 98. It was produced by Universal Studios. The reason he got to do it was because of Good Will Hunting. Good Will Hunting ended up making all kinds of money, and this was a thing he wanted to do for a long time. So basically, it was one of those things where he said, you don't have to pay me much, just let me do what I want, and they let him do it. But as we saw with the Rotten Tomato score, at least, it does have kind of a divided reception amongst fans. Now, you've not seen Psycho in either the original form or this version, but I'm sure by osmosis you're generally aware of the basic concepts of the story, correct?
There's a motel, there's a mother, there's a son. The son kills someone, then he really wanted to kill his mother. That's as much of the story that I know.
Okay, and which means you don't know the full story. So, okay. And this is going to be unique here for me as well, because this is the first time that I've seen this version of the movie since I saw it. Since I rage watched it in theaters when it first came out.
What is a rage watch in a theater?
I mean, you know me. I'm very particular. If something offends me artistically, I'm all over it. Because for me, the Hitchcock version of Psycho is the first movie I ever remember watching. I mean, it was on TV. It wasn't in theaters or anything like that. But that film holds a near and dear place to my heart. So the fact that Gus Van Sant made a big deal about making it a shot-for-shot remake, when in fact it was not, one. And two, when the acting choices you will see can be suspect at times. And I'll go into that after the musical interlude when we go into spoilers.
Well, let me ask you this, though, Tim. Mm-hmm. What was it that made you want to support the movie by paying for a ticket that you thought would communicate your rage to the producers?
It wasn't like that. I mean, the rage happened the more the movie started. When I saw the commercials, I was skeptical, but even then, I'm a type of person that, you can wow me. I may be skeptical about the movie trailer. I may have some mixed feelings about it, but I'm going to give a movie a chance. And being Gus Van Sant was in it. And, when you see the cast that is in this movie, there are a lot of great actors in here. So, I also don't want to give the impression that, it's going to be a thing you're going to absolutely hate, because in a lot of ways, it'll be interesting to hear your reaction because you have not seen the Hitchcock original.
Right.
So, it'll be interesting to kind of, hear your take on it, I guess. But it would be, honestly, if like Miley Cyrus came out with her version of Highway 61 Revisited. Just if she had all the same instruments and recorded it in the same way, but it was just her version of Highway 61 Revisited, how would you feel?
I definitely wouldn't buy it. I guess that's where I was confused. Like, why were you even in the movie if you were going to have that kind of reaction? But the way that you explained it makes sense. You liked the original movie. You wanted to give the remake a chance. You did, and as you were watching it, you just got madder and madder and madder.
Yeah, and like
I was thinking rage quit, or rage watch like rage quit.
Oh, no. And I'm not going to do that. Like, if I don't like something, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to, pay money to somebody that I don't like their work. That doesn't make sense. And like I said, with the quality of actors involved, with the director involved, with the story involved. I mean, they did use the same script. There's a lot going for it. But again, after the musical interlude, I'll go into some of my critique, and I'll being that you have not seen the original, I will see if you kind of get my point. So, anything else?
Yeah, I was wondering if this was the first movie that you ever saw. Do you think that has influenced the movies or entertainment that you like?
Definitely. The first two movies I remember were Psycho and Carrie. And it must have been like
wow.
We're talking like 4 or 5, so like 80, 81. And if I'm seeing them at home, my mother was an early fan of cable. Not that she would pay for HBO, but HBO did routinely have free weekends, so more than likely it was like an HBO free weekend that it was on. But yeah, and I think what I liked about the original movie more than anything, what's always the type of entertainment that draws me is that it does feel like escapist fare. This movie doesn't come across like a documentary. It's not real life. It's melodramatic, and you're being taken away into this story, and there are twists and turns, and the famous shower scene. Like, I saw the movie as a kid, but in Grand Rapids, when they opened the new museum, they had a Hitchcock Film Festival, and I saw Psycho on the big screen and everything. And the shower scene with the music was amazing to listen to, and everything there. And that's another thing too, the music. I mean, you are familiar with the shower scene music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's iconic for a reason, just how Hitchcock was able to kind of imply a lot more than what you actually see by just tricks of the camera, and also with music. And that's part of my critique of this movie. But let's go on here.
Okay, but so do you think that one of the reasons that you like adrenaline fueled entertainment is because you started out with such dramatically adrenaline producing films?
It may be. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, enjoyment of entertainment is like, it's really just your brain, shooting off various chemicals into your head for things that you like. You like it, so your brain rewards you with a chemical. So I guess as a kid watching a movie like that, it's very much possible that my brain liked that, and my brain wanted to keep on going for that type of reaction.
Right.
So,
Interesting.
I mean, the world may be a better place if my mother's plan of making me watch Little House on the Prairie over and over again actually
I loved Little House on the Prairie as a kid. I loved it. And I loved to, my mom would be like, what do you want to do today? And I'd be like, I want to go run through a field in a long dress.
Yeah, no, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, not my thing. But, yeah, so here we are, 1998's Psycho from Gus Van Sant. And even though I have trepidations about this movie, it's still like a curiosity type of thing. I would still definitely recommend the original over this. But, again, I'm interested to see what your response to this movie is going to be, because you've not seen the original. So,
Excellent.
All right. So with that, sit back, relax, and after the music stops, you are going to hear our thoughts on Gus Van Sant's Psycho. All right, welcome back. We have wrapped up 1998's Psycho from director Gus Van Sant. From this point forward, there will be discussion of spoilers. But come on, we are talking about Psycho here. By this point, I would be shocked if there's somebody listening to this that doesn't know the story. But, Professor, this was your first time watching the Psycho story. What did you think?
I thought it was a good movie. The story was interesting, and I really liked that sort of old-fashioned movie storytelling. It took a while, but there were interesting details and things to look at. People were more formal, and the costumes were more formal. I kind of liked that aspect of it once I got used to it. Like, I feel like Van Sant created a world that was just a little bit off, sort of in the way that, sometimes the Coen brothers, they create worlds that are just a little bit odd. Like, they're not quite right. It could be right, but it's just not quite right. Yeah. It just doesn't feel like reality. And so it kind of had that feel to it, which I don't mind. And I thought Vince Vaughn did a really great job.
This is where I grew to hate him as an actor, because I felt he gave a lazy performance at best. The reason I say that is this. Like I mentioned, the script that was used for this movie was the same script used for Hitchcock's, and like I said, 98% of the shots you saw were shot by shot the same. However, a number of the actors ended up taking different choices in delivery. That's my biggest issue overall, because from first moment you see Vince Vaughn on screen, he looks like he's suspicious, and it looks like he's trying to hide something. Whereas Anthony Perkins in the original, when he was confronted by others about what Mother did, he didn't know. And it's all in the performance. And that's what really, more than anything, really got the blood boiling in me. Having said that, to be fair, I always try to be fair. In a lot of ways, yes, to your point, there were some great choices that I did like in the movie. I mean, Gus Van Sant, his resume speaks for itself. Good Will Hunting, My Own Private Idaho, other movies like that. I do. Overall, even at the time, I thought you could revisit the story of Psycho, but it didn't make sense to insist it was a shot-by-shot remake when ultimately he would have little flares of his own throughout, like the shower scene, for instance. They actually showed her with knife wounds, and they showed like the knife going in whatnot in this version of the movie, whereas in Hitchcock's they had movie censors that toiled over every single frame of that scene to make sure they weren't seeing boob or the knife being stabbed, because they swore they did. Hitchcock left a lot more to the imagination. And that's another thing, too. Like the scene right before Marion Crane gets killed, the scene where Norman looks through the painting. In the original movie, it's Norman's just looking through. You get the idea that he's lusting after the woman. You get it. You don't need to see what you saw in the film, Norman Bates jerking off. That was just, we didn't need to see that because we get it.
Well, I feel like Gus Van Sant's movies in many ways explore male sexuality in a pretty explicit way, so I can see why he would want to make that explicit.
And you are correct. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's a gay man and has explored LGBTQ issues in his movies in the past, so it would not surprise me if he did that. It's to me, doing that was the same thing as the Blu-ray version of Return of the Jedi. When the Emperor is shooting the lightning bolts at Luke Skywalker, they added Vader saying no before he picks up the Emperor and throws him down the shaft. Whereas in the original version of the movie, Vader didn't say anything, he just did it, but you understood. You didn't need that no. It was superfluous, it was not needed at all. That's my point.
Well, let me ask you this, Tim. When you were a kid and you watched this, what did you think Norman Bates was doing?
I thought he was being creepy. Now, when I first saw it, again, I was like 5. I didn't know what masturbation was, so I wasn't thinking he was doing that. It's just, it was like, like the bathroom when you're a kid is like a sacred thing, and just thinking of other people being in the bathroom is just weird, and having somebody look was just like really weird. It was scary. I didn't at the time get the aspect of it, but the older I got, again, I love the fact that Hitchcock didn't make it explicit. It's like, but he didn't have to, if that makes sense.
Well, but here's the thing. When you look back at Hitchcock's time, we certainly don't feel like people were well informed and knowledgeable about their own bodies and sexuality.
Well,
So if Hitchcock is both the product of and result of an oppressive society, particularly with regard to women, and particularly sacred with regard to men, but also shame for everybody, just shame all around. How did that go? Was that a better outcome than now people being more empowered to make their own choices, having more personal freedom, more freedom of expression?
My issue is only with the storytelling aspect of it. What I mean is this. I think with Hitchcock leaving a lot to the imagination, that made the audience imagine things being a lot more worse than what he could have made it at that particular time. And that was the beauty of the original Psycho, the fact that it hinted at so much. Now, granted, in that time, it would have been nice in the 60s, in 1960, to be able to, have stories like we have them today. But, it's apples and pomegranates. We can't compare a movie that was made at that time to how they're made now, just because it was a different era. And that's another thing, too. It's like, it's a confused message if that was Gus Van Sant's intention, to have Norman's, psychosis be more prevalent, I guess. Because why show that and still keep it essentially in the original time period of the film? What I would not have had a problem is if Gus Van Sant had essentially just had a new script made based off the book and just had a modern version of it. Did his own take on the story. I would not have had a problem with that at all. It's just, more than anything, it's just the fact that I was just annoyed that he was just stressed so much that it's a shot-for-shot remake when it's not. It was not. 98% of it is. And they used the same script. It's just, he did go off on his own little tangents in some ways, as did the actors, and I didn't agree with all of those choices.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I mean, what? Yeah, I mean, I think I was more interested in the movie as like social phenomenon and social commentary rather than just a piece of art.
And yeah, that's one reason why I mentioned before we watched the movie, why I wanted to hear your thoughts on it, because this is your first exposure to Psycho. You didn't see the Anthony Perkins one, so yeah. I mean, do you? Yeah, so I definitely get it. Looking at it at the pure story itself. Me, I'm looking at like it's not the original. This is, he's not Hitchcock.
Right. I mean, he's not Hitchcock, and movie technology has certainly come a long way. And why would you want to make a shot-by-shot remake? We've seen that movie. Like, it's a weird thing to do, to be like, this is like one of the best movies by one of the best directors ever. Mm-hmm. So let me remake it. Like, it didn't need to be remade. It
didn't need to be remade essentially shot for shot.
Right. He could retell the story in some new way.
Yeah.
But it's weird that it was a shot for shot remake, because it felt like an old movie for sure. But the premise was that it was 1998.
Yeah, it's the year is not listed intentionally, so it's just like you would have the external shots of outside, and all the cars would be modern to 1998, but then you would cut to inside the tool store, and Viggo Mortensen's character has a Judy Garland album in his hand, right,
and is dressed like a cowboy guitar player, and
that's another thing too. I mean, they did update a couple of things in the script to make it seem more realistic for 1998, like the amount of money, for instance. Mm-hmm. But they also had Norman somehow living off the grid, because he has the story of the reason why the hotel is off the grid is the highway system, which was a true thing. A lot of these hotels and stuff off state highways ended up losing a lot of customers when the national highway and freeway system was created.
That's the whole story of Route 66.
Yeah, so it's there was some basis in that, but just I forgot my train of thought. But overall, it could have been revisited. I think, again, I am not a person that hates the idea of a remake off the bat. I think sometimes, especially given time, you can have new people have a new take on a story and have it be just as good. There are plenty. I mean, A Star Is Born. How many times has that been remade to acclaim each and every time?
And I've never seen it, not once.
Neither have I, but I mean, you get my point. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not... But remakes in and of itself are not a bad thing. But to your point too, why make it shot for shot or claim it's shot for shot? Because it's only going to be compared to the original. And when you are doing a quote unquote shot for shot based off of an Alfred Hitchcock movie, it's like he had to hit a grand slam home run to make this be a success, and there was no way he was going to be able to do that.
Well, certainly not for people like you.
Yeah, I'm a snob. I'm a gatekeeper. Fuck you, Gus. No, I'm kidding. No, again, I want to make it clear for the listeners out there, it's going to be enjoyable because there were enough elements of the original movie that I could sit back and not be upset watching it. I'm a lot more calmer than I was in my 20s. Let's put it that way. And also Danny Elfman is the guy who redid Bernard Herrmann's score. He kept the same score, but it was Danny Elfman leading the orchestra essentially that did that. So there's plenty of reasons to watch this, but it's a curiosity. This is, I think you would agree to, if the time ever comes in the future where you get a chance to watch the original, I think you would say the original is the superior one as well. Well,
I'm sure you're right. I mean, this definitely had the feeling of a novelty film.
Yes, and ultimately too, from everything I've read about Gus, I think he gets that. I think he's glad he did it, and as a creative person myself, I am glad that he had a chance to be able to experiment. I mean, and how many times have we complained on the show about Hollywood not experimenting anymore? The fact that they took a chance on this movie, it didn't work out, but they took a chance, and I think that was a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think on its own, it's a good movie. The story is good enough that the movie stands up, I think, with the story. But it felt very stale, and it just could have been so good, a modern version with like real effects and real tension and being really frightened and not just kind of like creeped out and this is kind of weird.
Or even like some of the social commentary stuff, like at the beginning, you find out that the Anne Hayes character, Marion Crane, steals the money because like her boyfriend is like paying off like a debt or something like that, and
a student loan.
Yeah, just something. It's a 1960 mindset of I can't marry you until you provide for me, or just something like that, which didn't feel right in 1990. Because again, the movie, the story itself does not have a time stamp to it.
But it does, because it's a script that was written in the early 60s.
Yeah, it's just in the 98 version, the exterior shots it's messed up. Yeah. I mean, it's a curiosity, and just take a chance to breathe if you're a fan of the original Psycho, and just enjoy this for what it is. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of this. Vince Vaughn was probably the one that I did not care for the most, because like I said, I just didn't care for his performance. I think he made all the wrong lazy choices, and that I think if he had done better, maybe my opinion of the movie would have been a little better.
Yeah, like I said, I was surprised. I guess I expected it to be horrific, but it was more just a caricature, a high school drama portrayal, which wasn't bad. It was like a really good high school drama portrayal, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah, so, Professor, let's give this a grade.
Okay.
What grade would you give the 1998 version of Psycho?
The 1998 version of Psycho, I'm going to go ahead and just assign a grade of C+ to that movie.
Okay. Reasons behind that?
Well, I thought it was better than average by a small margin, and in general, something to spend your time watching if you had some thematic reason to. Like if you were having a Halloween party, you could have it on in the background with the music, with the sound down.
Or if you need to record a quick podcast because scheduling prevents you from recording like you regularly should.
I don't know anything about that, because this was a very important episode of this podcast.
Exactly. Every time we're on the air.
Yep.
My grade, I would have to give it a C. Like I said, to your point, it is not a bad film per se. There are plenty of awful, awful films that this triumphs over.
Up in Smoke, for example.
Yeah, we tried to watch Up in Smoke and didn't review that, but man.
We couldn't even. It was so terrible. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of, again, movie as social product as well as social conditioning itself.
Yeah, definitely different times, let's put it that way. Yeah, Psycho, the 98 version, a C. There are some good elements of the cast. Julianne Moore, usually if she shows up, I'm going to be happy.
I thought William H. Macy was great.
He did good. The character he played was played by Martin Balsam in the original movie, and I can guarantee you probably, if you saw a picture of Martin Balsam, you would know who he is. If you don't already know who he is, but Martin Balsam always seemed like older. Now, for all I know, they may have been the same age when they both made their versions of the same movie, but William H. Macy always struck me as like, our age,
Oh my gosh, we're so old.
Getting there. I mean, my goodness, great. But the reason for the C is that, again, actors' choices and directors' flourishes that just didn't need to be done were made that I think took away from the story, and the fact that it just was not updated. Making a movie set in 1960 and filming it like a 1960 movie just didn't make sense in 1998. But that is Psycho. Regardless of whether you watch the 98 version or the 1960 original version, it's still a great story and also a great book. Originally a book written by Robert Bloch.
Cool.
So definitely recommend checking that out. Now overall, horror movies.
This one I didn't find all that frightening. Because the shower scene is just so famous. There's going to be stabby, kill.
You did jump at one jump scare, and that's when Arbogast got stabbed.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love it. It makes me feel weird inside. It's not enjoyable for me.
So this is the end of our experiment.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, and to be clear, like I said, I don't want to give the audience the impression that I'm the greatest horror movie fan in the world myself. There are movies that I like, but, I'm more of an action movie type of guy,
Yeah.
So that is Psycho. So thank you all again for listening every Wednesday and Saturday in this podcast space. We will have something to entertain your ear holes. Until then, we bid you adieu.
Farewell.
Mon ami.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.